Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Advisor. My name is Lisa Urbanski. I'm here with Stacey Chalemi, and we are here talking about sex. So this is episode 4 in our Taboo Topics podcast, where we're talking about all the things sex after 40 and what it's like to age. I'm excited to be back. Today we're going to talk about how to keep sex exciting. Because that's really tough to do as we get older, especially as we get more and more comfortable with our partners. How's it going, Stace?
I'm doing good. How's it going with you?
Yeah, I'm good too. I'm ready to get this topic out there. Getting loud. Talk about sex. Maybe I need to have sex. I don't know. I'm feisty today.
You might. It'll definitely relax you, hopefully.
Yes. Yes.
So I remember like going back and doing this like audio and it was like the lights were low, the candles were lit, we were under the covers. And then we were like, going on, little by little. And then I used the words and then blah,
Uh,
because because you know what, I feel like, society makes you think sometimes, that, like sex is supposed to be the way it was in the 20s, and then they say your 50s are the best times ever, but
I,
I feel like it's sometimes like a myth. It all depends on the person, depends on their age, it depends on what their energy level is. Because I have seen people in their 60s, they have more energy than me. So
yeah.
it really matters on each individual person. But like when I go out with a lot of women and after a couple glasses of wine, everyone's talking about sex. And there are
Mhm.
so many women that feel the same way. It's like they feel like after they get to a certain age, sex feels like more of a job than it does pleasure because it takes so long to get you to that point where you feel excitable. And
Yeah.
then it gets you to that point where you're actually going to get an orgasm, where guys just, it could be one, two, three, and boom, they're done.
Boom.
And
Yeah.
then it's not like that for a woman. And think about it, if you go out, you're tired, and your guy wants sex and you know that it's not a one, two, three thing for you. And then it's like you're thinking to yourself, oh, I just don't have the energy. And even though you
Yeah.
may want it, it's like you're not physically there, to put in the effort. And sometimes that could be like a stress on relationships too. But when you're going through perimenopause and menopause and then even postmenopause, you feel it. You notice the changes. The question is, I think, is like, how do we recharge our bodies and rekindle the relationship so we can feel like we're in our 20s and 30s again, and we can actually, is it possible to be able to have that sexual relationship, maybe not exactly the same, but to have the same emotions and the same level of excitement that we did when we were younger?
Yeah. My totally. When you're saying that, I'm picturing like some one week out of the month I'll wake up and I'm just like ready to go. And then it's like the short window of time. And then it gets out of my mind. And then to get back into that headspace it feels like so much work sometimes. But yeah, we need to reconfigure like how we look after ourselves and how to drive that back into the relationship, right? Because
Yeah.
as a woman, you're right. We're so in our heads. We're so emotional. Guys is just like I don't know. They just like, get a hard on like easily, it seems like. And for us, it's like the slowest running engine. Like you have to like
Yeah.
start it and it doesn't start sometimes. And it takes so long to get to get the engine running. And then it just seems like a lot of work sometimes.
Feels like we're classic cars and they're Ferrari. It's like, for guys, they could ejaculate within a minute, if they really wanted to. For a woman, it's a whole process. It could take a while,
Mhm.
and a lot of times it takes foreplay and then it takes you to get to that level of excitement and then you have to get that stimulation going on and then you have to really then that stimulation has to continue in order to actually get to that peak where you actually have
Mhm.
that orgasmic feeling. There have been many discussions I've had with women, and they've had sex with their partners for years, and they've never experienced an orgasm. They're like, well,
Yeah.
what's an orgasm? And it's like they don't know because they never experienced it because it's not easy for all women to experience an orgasm.
No.
So it sounds easier when you're watching it on a TV show or you're reading like 50 Shades of Grey, but it's not like that in real life.
I want, if any of my ex-boyfriends are listening to this, please stop listening now. So, so I turned 30 and I had never had an orgasm from intercourse.
Hmm.
So I felt like I didn't want to say it out loud. I'm like, you know what? I heard someone else talk about it. So I go to the sex store and I say to the lady, I said, I've never had an orgasm from intercourse before. It's always been from external stimulation, clitoris and all that other stuff. And she said, take this home with you, plug it in, and try it out because this is going to give you an orgasm. So she sold me this vibrator that was supposed to, stimulate me from the inside. So I remember I had this red bag with this new vibrator, and I walked into my office and I put it in my desk drawer and I plugged it in, and I went home and I was so excited to try it. But I was then able to have an orgasm
Hmm.
after learning on my own. But before then, I did not know what it felt like. So it was like, that's 30 years old. So for basically 10, 15 years of my life, I'd never had an actual orgasm from intercourse.
Yeah. And most women don't. I lost the ability to have an orgasm after I had my kids. Like I
Mhm.
went totally numb inside. And I think I mentioned this earlier. Like, I for a long period of time, I could not feel an orgasm. Like it totally went numb. And then I went and I got the O shot, and the O shot stimulated my vaginal canal. It developed what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to develop a thicker wall of skin. It's supposed to rejuvenate that whole area. And it brought back the feeling, and I was able to actually experience orgasm. But most women, a lot of women use toys as a way of stimulation because it gets them to
Mhm.
that point where to that peak a lot quicker
A lot
and
quicker.
it's a
Yeah.
lot quicker. Yeah. And so they can enjoy sex more and it doesn't have to feel like it's so much work.
Mm. For sure, for sure. So what are things that we can talk about to help other people kind of rekindle their relationship? Or what are things that people can do to keep sex exciting? So something I'm thinking of is like keeping those little playful games, keeping up with those playful games. Like, so sending a flirty text to your partner, it
Yeah.
may seem weird and it may seem like, oh, we used to do that when we first met, but it adds that excitement back into the relationship, like adding
100%.
spice, right? Like changing it up. Like they're not going to
Yeah.
expect you to send them a nude, because you've been married, if
Yeah.
you've been married for a long time, but if you do it, then they'll be like, ooh, and then they'll get excited again, right? So what do
Yeah.
you think? What are little things that couples can do? Because that's something that I've started trying to do is like be more playful, be more flirtatious, just stuff like that. I don't know.
I
It's
think
tough.
your partner would appreciate that. I think, because it's like it's stuff that you haven't done for so long. It's
Yeah.
like it makes you feel like you're back in the old days, like when you first started and you were sending each other like either texts or you were calling them and saying certain things and if you send a picture, tell them please delete it after so long so no one else sees this, please, you
Yeah.
know. But all that stuff is part of, it's the pre-foreplay. It's like, and then I think foreplay is important too, it's a way to get intimate with the person and have fun and get that level of excitement up to that point where you could actually start feeling it, feel the excitement. Because once that dopamine kicks in, then you're really going to start feeling the excitement and then the connection's going to be made, even the way you look into each other's eyes and just the way you touch each other, even like hugs and kissing and stuff like that. A lot of times as you're getting older and you're with the person for so long, you're not doing as much as you used to,
Yeah.
and it's just and then for people who just don't have lose the interest, there are like the maca root is supposed to be really good, and I've tried maca root, and it does. It stimulates you. It makes your sexual libido go up, and there are different ways to make your libido go up because if you're suffering because of hormone imbalance, a functional medicine doctor, maca root, there's like lots of different things you could do, because a lot of women, either if they're suffering from, just, lack of progesterone or testosterone, those are important hormones, and then you have women who are, imbalanced with their estrogen and they're getting the hot flashes, like
Mm,
what woman wants to have sex when she's having hot flashes ongoing?
totally.
So it's like, you have to like look at what's going on and what can you do. And they have like certain types of supplements that will actually make you feel more sexual and make you feel more energetic, and that could help also. And just doing things differently, surprising each other with something different, because I think when you're with this person, sometimes the same routine over and over can get boring, but you've been used to it for so long that, sometimes you got to stop and think, what could I do to spice it up?
Yeah, I know like we have a routine, like Matt and I, and like I can almost predict sometimes what's going to happen next. And yet in my mind's screaming like, "Oh, I wish he would do this." But sometimes I don't say it, right? So it's like getting really comfortable with expressing what you want. You would think that when you're with the same person for so long that you'd feel comfortable, but it's awkward sometimes, right? Or I don't know,
Yeah.
I get in my head way too much. So I think a lot of it is like a mental game too. It's like how to stay curious about the other person. Just knowing that the same thing doesn't work all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just the routine and switching it up. Um, yeah, like, and if I'm super stressed, I'm not horny. Like I'm so dry. I'm dry as a raisin, right? So it's like
Yeah.
balancing all that stuff. So yeah, stress is a real thing. Like that really can affect a relationship. So it's
Oh,
always staying
yeah.
on top of that stuff. And you and I were talking about it before, but just like looking after our bodies and putting good things in our body, making sure we're exercising and doing the stuff we need for ourselves. That's all going
Yeah.
to contribute to exciting sex as well. Because the better you feel about yourself, the better sex you're going to have. It's just what happens, I guess, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and think about it too. If you're like always tired, you're not going to be in the mood for sex. You're not going to want
Yeah.
sex if you're tired. Some people work so much that they're so drained, or some people, like again, would go back to the hormone thing, they're
Yeah.
they're getting to that point where their energy levels are just automatically starting to get drained. Well, then you have to figure out ways to get that energy level up again because, and then if you're working so much, well, maybe you need to like figure out like, certain times that you can, try to figure out like maybe in the weekend, doing something, nice and sexy on the weekend, maybe go out for a nice dinner, walk in the beach, and trying to figure out how to, work around your schedule and not let work or anything else in your life interfere with your relationship.
Mm. Yes, totally. Like scheduling sex. Like it's people say it sounds weird, and I know like it sounds a little boring, right? Like if sex is in the calendar, you have to schedule it out. But then I like it because then I get in the game. It's like
Yeah.
7 o'clock on Wednesday night. I know I'm getting lucky, so I'm like ready for it. I think about it during the day, so it actually helps me get in the mental game.
Right, right. I know actually a
Yeah,
lot of people like that. Like, like at first I was like I wasn't keen about it. I was like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of scheduled. It's like
yeah,
not spontaneous or wild, That's my Pisces in me,
yeah,
the daydreaming girl, but then it kind of if you look at it like that, like you're thinking about it during the day, it's gonna happen, that could actually bring up some excitement into the relationship too. So it can go either or, actually.
yeah. Absolutely. What about like adding certain things in? Like, how do you feel about like naughty books and intimacy podcasts? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know if I'm listening to like a naughty book, like that could get me in the mood too.
Oh yeah, when I was reading Fifty Shades of Grey, like that was really excitable. Like I like that, I think I read the first three. I didn't get to the fourth one. I have the fourth one. I just haven't not had time to like read it.
Yeah.
It's from his perspective, the fourth one,
Ooh,
and the other ones,
interesting.
Yeah, so the first three are from her perspective. Now it's like his way of thinking from the situation is supposed to be totally different, through his eyes. But, it was so descriptive and it was so, so sexy the way they made it. Nothing like the movie. I thought the movie sucked, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I
And-
agree. Yeah.
But the book itself was really good. I like the way she wrote it. I like that I have how much description she put into it. And I thought it was really sexy. It kind of puts you in this la la land where you can like make your own fantasies up. It puts you into this fantasy
Mhm.
world. And then you could actually play out, like, now you're horny, now you're excitable,
Yeah.
now, you could do something with, your partner and, have something really fun going on. So it's like, fantasy books are great. I think, a lot of people get off on porn. A lot of people get off on, listening to something sexy, Some people get, off on music, Sometimes certain songs will get people like really hot, and then they just like really get into it. It's like what works for the person, And sometimes, the partner knows that something else is really going to get them going, so they'll like, automatically, do it, to get their partner more into the mode, and it works, Whatever like works for that couple, I say go for it, do it, and be explore, check things out, try new things, I don't think there's ever an age where you're too old, you know what I mean? I think,
No.
as long as you can get it up, you're good.
Yeah, I want to be like 80 years old and still having sex. Like that is my life goals.
Yeah. Well,
So I like you mentioned porn. I know like a lot of women that I talk to really have a problem with like their partner watching porn. So
yeah.
I guess like how do you feel about that? I know like if we were watching it together as a thing to create intimacy for us, but if
Yeah.
like my partner was continuously watching porn by himself to get off, I think I would have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's like a big problem. We even have somebody on our podcast that, gets guys off of porn because a lot of times what happens is they start listening to it and then they're is not just listening to it with their partner, they're continuously listening to it all the time. They're spending more time with porn than they are with their partner, and
Right.
that is like a major problem. I was never a big porn person. I didn't like it very much at all. I don't know. To me, it was just I never got into it. It just wasn't for me. Like some people like it. I know a lot of women that watch it with their husbands. It wasn't for, I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. So I'm not like big on it. Like I said, like certain music I like really get off of, like there are certain, books like that I'll read, like Fifty Shades of Grey was really cool for me. Certain romantic books, I liked, I think porn can be a problem if you're devoting more time to
Yeah.
to the porn than you are to the person, and for me I just like, a lot of times, if I ever looked at it, it was just like a bunch of ugly people having sex, and it was like, where are the good looking guys and girls? I'm like, I can't watch this is not me.
Yeah, totally. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I went through a phase when I was younger where I was single for a long time, so I explored that area. But I do know like we talk to a lot of people and I do know that like some guys really struggle with it. And it's a serious issue for some guys and they're actually
Yeah,
addicted to it. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't talk about it lightly. Like I do get that guys are really struggling with it. Because it's such a rush for them, right?
yeah.
Like it's such a rush, a control thing. But yeah, I take it or leave it for sure.
Yeah, we actually have two people on our podcast that have two separate podcasts that both talk about how to get off porn. One was a guy that was addicted to it, and one was a girl, and she had some kind of virus, and it triggered something in her brain and made her very sexual, and she got addicted to porn. She got herself off of porn, and then now she helps guys get off of porn. And
Oh
so now
wow.
she has this huge thing that she does, and she said there's tons of guys that want to get off porn. They just can't. They're like addicted to it. And that's a problem. If you're spending more time watching porn than you are spending more time with your girl, then there's a problem.
That's a problem. And I would highly recommend that that man or woman tell their partner because I know I would feel like it was me because if someone's addicted to porn, then they're not getting off with their partner because they can't
Yeah,
really. They need that like extreme stimulation. So yeah, like tell your partner so you can get help. Like it's a real problem.
it is a real problem. Definitely. Definitely. But I definitely think, like there are lots of ways women, and guys can like still, have really healthy relationships and have really fun relationships as they get older. It doesn't end, it definitely doesn't end, and if you see yourself starting to go through changes and you're just not having the energy or the motivation or, because girls could go a lot longer, once they have sex, they're good for a little while, like where a
Mhm.
lot of guys, it's like, they need it all the time. They want it all the time. It's like a routine for them. Where women, they're like, I'm fine for a while, after I've had sex, So it's different, I know some females that don't feel like that. They want it consistently. So it depends, but I do hear a lot of women say, I'm good for a while, And then I do have a lot of friends too that say they want it all the time. So it's, it all depends, I think, on the person. But, I think if you are starting to feel like really like not into it anymore and you're not feeling the flame, I think there's lots of things you could do, and I always say check out the functional medicine, like, do the blood work, see what you're deficient in. Because sometimes just
Mm.
balancing out your nutrients, your vitamins, your
Oh
hormones,
God, yeah.
it just like you feel like you're in your late 20s and 30s, I felt like I was in my late 20s and 30s when I started going on hormones. I would say early 30s. I went all the way back. I just felt like a youthful person. I felt like I was in my early 30s again and it was like life was grand, like everything was, it does. It bring it, you may be still getting older, but you don't feel it because you're on the hormones and everything is balanced and natural. And they even tell you what vitamins and what supplements to take and what your nutrients you're lacking and stuff like that. And once you're like, if you do it on a routine, you might get that urge, that your libido is definitely going to go up. You're
Mhm.
not going to be as tired as you used to, and if you have trouble have an orgasm, maybe check into the O shot. Even guys can get P shot too. If they're suffering
Mm.
from, erectile dysfunction, they have the P shot for guys, and that helps a guy, get back his erection, his heart erection that he might have lost along the way.
Yeah, B12 is good for guys too. A lot of guys are lacking in B12, and that
Yeah.
could be major for erections.
Hmm.
I just know like the older I'm getting, and I mean, I have no trouble with my libido. Like I could have sex all the time, but I do know
Yeah.
that it's different every day. And like, so I'm just learning to be okay with that. And like, I like different things now that I never used to like. So I don't know.
Right.
I really just try and keep telling like Matt what I want. And like
Yeah.
communication is so important, but it's okay if you don't like something that you used to do. And we all
Yeah.
change and grow. So I think it's just staying curious, being playful, really being flirtatious, and then just not having expectations. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you shouldn't have expectations because I think that kills it because what happens if you don't meet up to those expectations, then you're
Yeah.
disappointed, you know? And I feel like, for me, like I feel like I've changed so much as a person that my needs have changed along with it. So what I liked when I was younger, has totally changed now. And it's just you become different as you get older, and then your wants and your needs become different too. And that's why communication is key because, if you've been with someone for a while, they're not going to know that, you've changed unless you've told them and say, you know what, I don't
Mm.
really like this as much anymore. I prefer this instead. And as long as you say it in a nice way and it doesn't sound like you're insulting them in any way, because
Hmm.
guys get really sensitive, you have to be really careful how
Totally.
you say things, because
Yeah.
it hurts their ego, I think. So if you
Totally.
say things in a nice way, and you don't say it's about them or their fault, and you're just saying, I'm just feeling different, this is what I like now, it's nothing with you, it's just this is what I like. I'm just feeling, not feeling it, rather do this instead. And that brings a bond and an understanding, and then they know how to please you, and you have a better relationship that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, I think, 3.5 years for us, and like things
Mhm.
have changed dramatically. And Yeah, it's really about putting in the work and the effort and that balance, right? So,
Yeah.
but I think sex can be exciting at any age, honestly. And I'm gonna be that 80-year-old sexual crazy woman. I can promise you that.
I actually could see that. So
Life
I
goals,
could
life goals.
I could see it.
Do you have any last minute things you want to say about this topic? I think I've covered everything I really have to say about it. I just like do it. Take care of yourself, work with your partner, and strive to be that 80-year-old sexual being.
Yeah, the thing that comes to my head is that you could always light up the flame again. You could always, put that spark, whether it's 40 or 50 or 60, you could always rekindle the spark. Even younger couples, if you feel like it's dying down and you really love the person, you still can rekindle it at any age. And I think too, like if people are going through bodily changes and they notice the changes, the biggest problem is that so many guys and girls are afraid to go and talk to a doctor because they feel
Hmm.
embarrassed. And, I don't think a regular doctor is always the answer because they don't look at these things differently. A lot of them will throw pills at you. If you
Right.
go to a functional medicine doctor, they got some great natural ways of doing things that are really, I feel are beneficial and they don't have those side effects that a lot of those pills have, I've heard stories of people who take Viagra and then they say they couldn't get it down and like for
Oh my
hours. And
God.
then they've had people that went into the ER because won't go down. And
Yeah,
it's like, check out a functional medicine doctor, talk to them. They deal with these problems all the time
all the
and,
time.
they're so common. And, and then just look in different ways that you can, spark it up, pre-foreplay, foreplay, doing things differently, surprising the other person. Like you said, maybe send them a little note or something or a little picture that they would never expect. And it's like, who is this person? But it's like, just to trying different things and toys are a fun thing to bring into the relationship too.
Totally.
People don't talk about it because they're embarrassed, but it's a fun thing that you can bring into the relationship, make it a little different, and spark things up at the same time. And I think, there's so many different things that you could do to spark your relationship. You just have to be willing to and communicate, with your partner. And then, there's like tons and tons of things that we can make lists, even like, dressing up a little bit differently, and just like surprising the other person. And and for the girls, if you want to surprise your guy, go get him a G-string and say, "Hey, put this on." And
Yeah.
something, fun, and do things, differently. There's always way to spark things up. You just have to be willing and your partner has to be willing, and if they're not so willing, if you have like someone that has like a really stringent personality,
Yes.
baby steps, like, get them to try something and do a little manipulation, and get them to try things little by little and break them, because eventually if they like it, they'll start to loosen up a little bit. You'll get them to loosen up.
Yeah, it's always, I love that. Like we have to talk about it. And I love what you said about going to see your natural path and natural medicine doctor. And don't be afraid to talk about it. Like it's just mind-boggling to me. Like we're all having sex, we're all going through these things. And that's why I love these conversations with you because we can talk about it out loud and people can hear it and be inspired by it. So
Yeah.
thanks for sitting down and having another sex chat with me.
Oh, no problem. I love doing this with you.
Amazing. I'm excited for the next episode. I don't
Yes.
even know what we're going to come up with, but it's going to be great. And
Yes.
to our audience, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you have questions or comments about sex after 40, please leave them for us because we would be happy to. I know, like, we would be happy to get back to them and provide those answers. So
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And if you have
amazing.
any topics you want to hear about, I say put them in the comment box and mention them to us.
Oh yeah, we'll cover it.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I'll dress up as that really sexual 80-year-old for you guys. We'll see. Oh my gosh, I'm only kidding. All right, Stacey. Well, it was a blast. Thank you so much again. We'll see you soon.
All righty. I'll see you soon, sweetheart.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.